Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from the Singapore Fintech Festival, and joining me for this segment, we have Alvin Lee. He is the APAC Regional Head at Puro.earth. We're here to discuss the impact of COP28. We'll also discuss carbon removal trends as well. Alvin, it's great to see you, as we do each year. Welcome back to TradeTalks.
Thank you. Welcome back to Singapore, Jill.
Thank you. Which countries are investing in scalable solutions to support decarbonization? What are some of the trends that you're seeing there?
Sure. Well, since we're in Singapore, I do have to give a shout out to Singapore. There's a lot of amazing things happening here for decarbonization. The Earthshot Prize was hosted here last week to showcase a lot of leading firms, new ideas. But Singapore has also been working very closely with neighbors in ASEAN to build out the grid so that we can make sustainable energy, electricity feasible. And then finally, I think Singapore's done a lot of work in building out knowledge infrastructure and then collaborating with neighbors. Beyond that, well, I would say it's pretty widespread, all the work happening in decarbonization throughout APAC. So I'd highlight a few different areas. One is, of course, energy transition. So, using CCUS onto existing mechanisms just to lower the carbon footprint. We also see things like trying to phase out coal-fired power plants. Again, Singapore, with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, together with McKinsey, are trying to help those efforts. Asian Development Bank has been involved with that for quite a long time. And then there are new things happening, of course. Solar and wind continues in China. Now you have Vietnam doing a lot of new things in that area. You have discussions on geothermal power and trying to develop that. Indonesia, Philippines has potential for that. And then fuels, sustainable aviation fuels, biofuels. All that's happening in various parts of APAC. Finally, I'd give a shout out to corporations who are building out new services. It could be low carbon materials like concrete, but also carbon removal services. I would highlight Japanese corporates in that regard, really aggressive in building out those new capabilities because they can see the demand on the horizon.
Let's talk about COP28 for a moment here. Before we get to impact to Puro.earth business, what are some of the trends you expect to hear from there? Controversial, as it tends to be somewhat each year. What can we expect overall from COP28?
Right. So COP28, principally is a meeting of countries for negotiation, for cooperation. But that being said, there will be lots of other themes being discussed. So I think first and foremost, the world's really looking to see, will we make the energy transition successfully? So how do we phase out fossil fuels? By when? Is there going to be money to help do that? So that will be part of the discussion. But then another big part of that discussion will be how countries can effectively cooperate with each other. So there's this notion that you can trade carbon between countries using some very specific mechanisms, and those mechanisms need to be ironed out in terms of the details. Once those are ironed out over time, then you can start to see this trade happen. To accelerate decarbonization.
So it almost seems like the global banking financial system, where we have all those agreements in place with cross-border and so forth, the carbon market effectively needs that sort of framework in a way?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would observe that there are a lot of strong regional mechanisms already working, right? Things like the EU emissions trading system, various ones in the US, like in California, other regions. But now there's a really big opportunity to make that into a true global scale mechanism of trade. So that's an important potential outcome for COP28.
So how could it potentially impact Puro.earth's business specifically?
So Puro specifically, we want to help that international trade once it kicks in. And so the international trade will have different forms. Some of it will be one country supporting emissions reductions in another country. So for example, providing financing to introduce emission reduction technology. It could be even protecting nature to avoid deforestation. So there'll be those kinds of things. Puro specifically is involved with carbon removal, especially technology-based. So what we're looking for is a clear agreement on which of those technologies will be part of that overall trade discussion. And we see that there's good momentum for that. And then once that's agreed, there will be actually technical mechanisms that are needed. So we're prepared for that. So for example, you could have country A supporting country B by purchasing direct air capture credits, for example. In such a case, Puro.earth could do the certification for that project. And when we do that, we would generate what are called CO2 removal certificates for the project developer. And that project developer would be operating in a host country. Now, to support this UN 6.2 type of trade, those credits can be essentially retired into the host country, and then the host country delivers it to a buying country. So we could support that kind of a mechanism. We're waiting for final details for that, but those are the exciting possible outcomes for COP28.
All right, appreciate the insight, Alvin. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thanks for
joining me from the Singapore Fintech Festival. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.